Under California Labor Code section number 232, it is unlawful for employers to prohibit their employees from discussing or disclosing their wages, and it is also illegal to discriminate or retaliate against employees who share with their colleagues how much they're making or who have any other type of discussion about wages at workplace and presumably anywhere else. Now, at first, this type of law sounds counterintuitive because most of us have been told all our lives that you should not be discussing how much you're making with your coworkers and maybe with other people because it makes people feel uncomfortable. Maybe it creates animosity or jealousy. But this law envisions, the idea behind this law is that if people are free to discuss how much they're making at workplace, this type of information, this type of openness will flush out any type of unlawful discriminatory pay disparities, and this will remedy any unlawful inequalities in pay between sexes, between genders, between races, and so forth. Now, even though you as an employee have this protection, and even though employers should be aware of this law, this doesn't mean that if you, as an employee, if you approach your colleague and you ask them, hey, how much are you making? This doesn't mean that this type of question is not going to create some kind of animosity or some type of friction between you and that other coworker of yours. Because remember, this law covers employers. This law prohibits employers from taking certain action against employees for talking about wages. This doesn't protect you from having your relationships with your coworkers adversely affected by bringing up the issue of wages, sharing how much you're making, asking them how much they're making. So my first advice would be this. If you absolutely have to know how much somebody else is making at your workplace, ask them once. You can preface that question by, I'm really sorry, I'm just concerned that I'm being underpaid or I'm not treated equally. Would you mind telling me how much you're making? If they say they don't feel comfortable sharing how much they're making, that's it. Leave it at that. Do not insist. Do not ask again, because that's going to be the recipe. That's going to be a recipe for that employee going and complaining to the employer that you're harassing them, asking them about how much they're making. And even though you are allowed to ask that, insisting on that is a completely separate issue. And more importantly, like with any other complaint, whether it's a complaint about a protected activity or not, just because an employer is not supposed to discriminate or retaliate against you, just because it would be unlawful, that doesn't mean that they still cannot choose to say, you know what, I don't like that this worker of mine is snooping around asking other employees about how much they're making. I'm going to discipline them. I'm going to warn them, or I am even going to fire them. I don't care if it's legal or not. If they make a claim against me, I'll deal with it later, but I just don't like this behavior. So before you ask your coworkers about how much they're making, before you share with your coworkers about how much you're making, ask yourself whether that type of risk of rubbing your coworkers the wrong way or rubbing your employer the wrong way, whether that risk is significant and whether you are willing, whether you can afford taking that risk.